Just
I'm
let
not,
me know when we're live.
I'm gonna just check.
I think we are live.
Yes, we are live.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us again for those who are coming back or those who will be joining us in the future um, for this Follow Your Joy series. And we're really excited to have everybody here and to share our wisdom and our understanding and our perception of how we see things, which for me, I don't know about you, Chrissy, seems to be always kind of shifting as we grow in these human bodies and in our relationships and spiritually and and in every way, really. So today's topic, we're going to be talking about um, well, it's perception, yes, but it's also specifically more has to do with relationships, and we're going to do a series actually on relationships because we're always in relationships, not just romantic relationships, but we're in relationships with ourselves, we're in relationships with our parents, our family, people that we work with, the planet. um, Relationships is a huge subject. God, those who believe in God or whatever your word is for that, um, spiritually. So I think it's a very important topic to discuss as far as how we can be with ourselves in this world and how we can be with others in this world as well, um,
In
in a way that
harmony.
in harmony, in a way that's balanced, you know. So and it feels like, this is what people need now. I mean, we're still, as humans, we're still in our infancy and growth. We're still very new, even though we've been here for thousands and thousands of years. We're still very new to this human experience. Even the masters in India and those in Tibet have even said that we're babies. So we're all learning together, and this platform is to share basically what we're going through and how we experience things. And today's actual topic on perception and relationships is specifically about romantic relationships and how that how you can find balance in those areas, and also kind of our perception on what that means. So anyway, I don't know quite where you want to start with this, Chrissy. Do you want to pick an?
Um, yeah, well, I liked how you said this is our perception on perception in relationships. So, just want to blanket, like listen for the similarities and take what you like and leave the rest. Because this is just our perception. And our perception, so my perception, Tyler's perception is it's all based on our experiences, our beliefs, what we've been conditioned to, and what we've learned along the way in our lives. And so, that being said, every single human has a different perception. So if we just kind of throw out this, little head trip, mind trip, if every single human has a different perception and perception creates reality, then there are 8 billion realities here on this planet right now. And they're all different. They're all different. And what stands out the most to me about how to relate, whether it's with family or friends or coworkers or strangers or in a romantic setting, is that if we hold that idea that everyone's perception is different, then the goal in relating becomes to understand each other's perceptions and understand each other's realities. And there's so much that can come out of that. So before we continue, I'm curious, Tyler, what's coming up for you around all of that?
Yeah, so it's like we have our own reality, right? And then we're joining with somebody else that has their own reality.
Mm.
And, looking at an individual, not looking at it at a macrocosm from the sense that, we have governments and institutions that have their own perception of, you know, we're looking at it at more of a personal level here. And so, how does that perception come about? Well, it comes about from our conditioning in childhood and how we actually, what we're seeing, what we're taught from our parents, how the world is, all these things that we're just kind of soaking in as kids, how we see relationships. Our parents, if we're lucky enough to have two parents growing up, we have a perception of how they relate, and we don't see it as a kid as whether it's healthy or not. We might feel as a child if it feels good or not, but we don't know if that's a healthy or not relationship. So as we grow older, we take that conditioning with us and into relationships. Starting in high school when we first start dating, and then college if you go to college, or however you meet your next partner. So it's really, I think, in the beginning, looking at the conditioning and looking at how that conditioning forms the personality. Um, and then when you meet somebody, it's almost like you're meeting that shared personality or that shared conditioning or the challenges within that you need to actually move beyond what your perception is. So I think romantic relationships are a huge growing point for people because they actually push those beliefs or those perceptions to see if they're actually true.
Right. Yeah, I always have, not always, but for the past 10 or 15 years, have had the belief and the idea that the romantic relationship is the place. It's the hardest classroom. It's the classroom that offers the most learning and the most healing, because not only like what you said about how we see our parents and how they're relating or not relating, we're also, our first exposure to being loved is with our parents. So there's an observation of how they're loving each other or not loving each other. And then there's how they loved us. And that could be different. And so in our minds, in our human brains, we're making up a bunch of beliefs and a bunch of ideas about what love actually is.
Yeah.
When we enter into a loving relationship, if we're not conscious, or we'll say a romantic relationship, if we're not conscious, then those beliefs and those patterns and everything that we made up are just going to play out. And that can be really messy.
So when you say that if you're not conscious, do you mean not conscious of your perception
Of your
or what?
perception, of your beliefs, of the fact that they could even be different from the other person. I know when I got married at the age of 24, I had no awareness of that I even had beliefs that differed from the world. You know, I was so asleep to everything.
Yeah, so okay, so that's an interesting way to approach it. So it's, yeah, I think that we come into what we already have, right?
Mhm.
Um, so if we don't even have an awareness, like you said, or you're not conscious,
Right.
then it's going to be a lot more difficult. So maybe if we do see, what our parents taught us, or we believe, oh, I'm not going to do that. Like we either have a really good example, like this is how I want to be. You see your parents like just loving each other, or if you don't see that, either way, you're coming into it with that,
Mhm.
coming into a relationship with that. And so it's like even that thing of a relationship is still your own bubble. Like you don't really necessarily know if you're coming into a relationship because relationship is just a word, right? So
Right.
so there's deeper parts of that. Like what are we actually doing when we say romantic relationship? I mean,
Mhm.
what does that mean? Does that mean that we're close to each other in a way that other people aren't? I'm not just talking physically, but as far as how we communicate with each other, um, how we how that actually affects other parts of our lives now that we are together, in a relationship. How does that affect our relationship now with our kids or with our parents or with anybody? So I know I'm kind of going up. I'm just a stream of
No,
consciousness, right? I'm
I
just,
love the flow. I love the flow of this because I actually wrote down it's been kind of a working definition of relationship that I have used for the past couple of last decade or so, which is the definition of a relationship is two people making independent choices to continue to choose to relate to each other in a specific way. And so, whether it's a romantic relationship or it's a different kind of relationship, one with a coworker, right? You're voluntarily choosing to go to work to be in that relationship. Or with your kids, you're making choices to relate to them. And whether it's healthy or not healthy, like we said in the beginning, there's always relationships. And so, what does it actually mean to be in a romantic relationship? I think that's kind of where things need to start is in without expectation, kind of defining or coming together with your romantic partner and creating that container. What does it mean to be in a romantic
hmm,
relationship? Because as we just talked about, it means different things for different people based on their perceptions of what a romantic relationship is or their desires for a romantic relationship.
yeah. And I think you said a key word there, Chrissy, too, is expectations,
Mm-hmm.
right? Coming in with expectations of how the person's supposed to be, um, based on what you want might be very different than the desires of the other person, right? So expectations, and I'm not talking about shared desires. I'm talking about, mutual self-interest. I'm
Yeah.
talking about personal expectations coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And even psychology says that, there's a honeymoon period that's 6 months to 2 years, right? And that's because you're attracted to the mask of the person, you're attracted to the personality of the person, and once they start dissolving that mask and they're doing things, for example, that you don't like, or something happens, then they're not meeting those expectations,
Right.
they're not the person you thought that they were. So
Mm-hmm.
then the challenge comes, do I stay or do I go? If I stay, then I'm deciding to actually, possibly, not in every case, sometimes in some cases you have to go because it's abusive or it doesn't feel right to you. But in other cases, if you really love each other, you know if should I stay, should I go, then if you do stay, then you can decide to communicate on a deeper level.
Yeah.
So expectations, I think, if we could just almost like, come together in a way that's, we're not expecting the other person to be a certain way. For me, it's like, for you, I would just want you to be yourself, you know,
Yeah.
in a relationship, right? It's like, I just want you to be yourself. That would be the expectation, if it a healthy expectation, if I were to have any expectations. But in order to say that you need to be a certain way in order for me to be happy or to fulfill my desires, um, that's an expectation that's gonna eventually crumble the relationship, and then you have two people doing that. And
Yeah.
then, So that moves into communication, right?
Yeah. But I
It's
want to
like,
pause here a little bit and go a little bit deeper into, I'm curious what you mean by personal expectations. The one that comes up for me the most is in the people that I work with, in, mistakes that I have made in the past, is that I think the biggest personal expectation is that we come into a romantic relationship with the expectation that that person is going to make us happy, or that person is going to fulfill our needs in a way that we can't fulfill them on our own. And I think that is probably one of the biggest pitfalls when it comes to relationship, because I personally believe that if you're not happy on your own, if you're not happy prior to entering the relationship is only going to magnify that unhappiness.
yeah, absolutely. So there's that initial feeling, this person makes me feel good, right?
Yeah,
Until they don't.
right.
so so um, believing, I guess, from maybe a higher perspective, or if you were to say like a spiritual perspective, believing that that person is what makes you feel good, that can be definitely a pitfall, because however you're feeling inside is because of you, right? Ultimately, and that other person is just a reflection of that love that you're feeling. So if you were to take away that other person, the question is, would you still feel that love in within yourself? And or do you need that person to actually fill that gap? So then we get into need versus that desire to actually, the healthy part, which would be that desire to actually be with that person, not based on fulfilling a need within themselves.
There's so much to,
Yeah.
and I think that is a common perception that collectively we're shifting away from. I think more and more people are seeking out, because of failed relationships, they're seeking out the truth. But I do believe that the perception that the romantic relationship is a place that's going to complete me, or that's going to fulfill me, or it's going to fix me or make me happy, or any fill in the blank, I think that's a huge perception that is a collective one, that is one of the reasons why there's a lot of fallout in relationship.
Yeah, and I think you're right also when you say that that is shifting, because I think less people are jumping into relationships and more people are interested in, self-love and how they can feel about themselves, and how they can discover more of who they are through spiritual practices or doing things that they love to do, right? So that's, it comes back to the self, really. It's like fulfilling your own needs, discovering what it means to be whole and complete within. And then if someone comes along, awesome, that's in that same space, right? Um, so there's no, that other person coming along, there's no need to fulfill. And I'm not saying that challenges won't happen, but because if you believe that now, if you hold if you hold a higher belief that, okay, my relationship is with me, or is my relationship is with God, whatever that higher ideal is for you, then um, you're not looking, and then something magical happens, right? And you meet somebody else that's not looking, and then in order to hold that belief, there'll be challenges within that. Do you really believe the thing that you believe? And I think that even goes in, spiritual circles and communities, that we have all these high ideals about loving the self, connecting with God, connecting with the earth, manifestation, all these things. So, and we're being challenged right now. Do you believe, do you really, really, really believe that? So that's where the challenges come in, to see how you can hold on to that belief. And
Yeah.
I'm not mean hold on in an attachment sense. I'm holding on in a higher sense. Like, is that really what you want to believe? So, yeah. So coming back to expectations, I think expectations are fewer when you're in that space
Mm.
of that you first, or you and God first, or whatever your belief system is. And then when you come together, it's there's more of a gentleness, because you respect yourself enough to be able to respect the other person. So when the other person's going through a hard time, you can be there for them, and vice versa. Right? You understand. There's a level of compassion and there's a level of love there that is beyond you. Really, is you, but is beyond you. That's actually supporting that relationship, or that romantic relationship.
Yeah. I think that like everything you just said is the shift in the perception of what the purpose of a romantic relationship or any relationship, but we're talking about romantic relationships today. So I think that's the shift in what the purpose of a relationship is. So the way I see it, my perception is that the purpose of a relationship is to bring love to it. And if I don't know how to love myself, if I don't know how to take care of my own needs, if I don't value myself or my own needs, how can I possibly extend that love to you or even care about, what's going on with you? And Teal Swan talks about the foundation of a safe relationship is taking the other person's heart as your own. And that
Mm-hmm.
is what love is taking the other person's heart as your own. So if you're not used to caring about your heart, valuing yourself, making sure that you're connected spiritually, then how could I possibly be able to take your heart as my own? If I do take it as my own and I am not paying attention to love and taking care of my needs and myself, then I'm not going to be loving you, if
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense.
Totally makes sense. You probably make more sense than I do right now, because I just ramble and have these streams of consciousness. I don't even remember what I'm saying, but yeah. So yeah, so yeah, because you can, you're taking care of yourself, you're loving yourself, and when you're coming together, it's you, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a mirror of you. So why wouldn't you want to continue to take care of your own heart? Because it's you. That person is you. And that goes beyond, of course, it is romantic relationships, but it goes beyond that as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and I think that's super necessary for the romantic relationship because it is the hardest classroom. Like I think something that you mentioned before, um, we're attracted, part of the phenomenon of attraction is that we're attracted to, like our subconscious is attracted to the very formula that's going to bring up all of our stuff that's going to heal it. And it's going to shatter our beliefs or at least bring them to the surface so that we can take a look at them. And so if we're grounded in love, if we're grounded in I call it truths with a capital T, right? The truths of the universe. Since we mentioned that there's 8 billion perspectives, so there's 8 billion realities, which is 8 billion different truths. If we're connected to the truth with a capital T, that we are love, that we are reflections of each other, that we are all one, if we're grounded and connected there, then as these beliefs arise or these wounds, right? We were wounded relationally, so we're going to heal relationally. As these things arise, well, if we're grounded in the truth, now we're better equipped to navigate and to be able to communicate what's coming alive for us without attachment to it, so that we can keep that love in the center of the relationship.
Yeah, and it's like a reset, the truth, this idea of the truth, that we're all seeking is truth with the capital T. We know it, we can feel it. Maybe we can't, articulate it exactly, but we know what it feels like. And maybe we don't. Maybe there's some people don't know what that is, but and we're all seeking, even though we might not be consciously aware that we're seeking or not. We're all wanting that truth, and we feel that it's truth when someone speaks. We can hear the truth in their voice, or when somebody does a little, gesture of kindness. I think I heard recently that I think it was my mom that was telling me is like one little gesture of kindness is 1,000 times greater than 100 monks praying. And that goes with relationships too, just the little things that we do. you know how are you doing today? What's going on with you? Communicating. I know I keep going way out here, but I'm trying to bring it back into romantic relationships.
Right.
So so this idea of, not completely forgot what I was saying. I
The
forgot
little
what you were
acts of
what you said.
kindness.
What's that?
You were talking about a little act of kindness is
Yeah,
more impactful than a year of prayer.
yeah, but before
Oh,
that, that's okay.
somewhere in
Yeah.
there. That's all right. We'll reset.
Yeah, so reset, like the truth, right? So, and I don't know if we're repeating ourselves here, but it's true. It's like 8 billion perspectives if there is 8 billion people. I don't even know if that's even a perception, right? Is there
Right.
really 8 billion people? Because we've
Right.
been because we've been told that,
Right.
you
That's the
know?
belief. Yeah.
Yeah, like everything we've been told, is that really true? So
Right.
that's why I say question everything and don't believe anything, and find out for yourself. And I think that's part of, what the truth is. So that's a whole other video.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then we have all these perceptions. We have everybody is in different spaces. The Western world makes up such a small percentage of the rest of the world, and we have it so much better than the rest of the world. Just having a roof over our heads. That's a perception. But coming back to romantic relationships, it's like, okay, now what? There's a foundation.
Mhm.
So the foundation is my foundation, my connection personally is my connection with the planet, it's my connection with source God, is my connection with myself. And now, coming into a relationship, I bring that with me, and I use that. I not use, but I use that feeling of truth to somehow want to create balance in a relationship, right? Um, so foundation. I think you mentioned foundation earlier. I think it's a really good, like, communication is the first thing I think that comes with a relationship, and that
Yeah.
moves beyond the expectations, right? So communicate as much as possible at first, so the expectations in the negative sense um, don't disappoint you. And what do you feel about that?
Yeah. Well, I think communicate as much as you can always, not just at first, but I hear what you're saying. So I guess I'm hearing the question. I don't know what people are commenting, but I'm hearing a question of, so how do we navigate? I think a couple of terms that you've used were in balance, and one term that I like to use is in harmony. And so I think the question that I'm hearing is how do we navigate through romantic relationships, knowing that you have a different perception than I have, and that's pretty much always going to be the same, even just if we're sitting together, right? Like my view right now, my perception of reality is just 100% different from yours, right? Like we're in two different locations. And so both perceptions are true, but they're different. And so, how do we navigate in harmony? And how do we use this knowledge of perception to do that? You know, to stay in that place of love, to stay in that place of offering and extending, especially when, and I keep coming back to this, it's really strong because in my experience and with my own life and with all my clients that I've worked with, the triggers in romantic relationships are thicker or stronger or more difficult to stay centered or to stay aware. You know, the trigger can take over, and then you just create a bunch of conflict where nobody's getting their needs met. So how do we navigate a romantic relationship in harmony?
Okay, so I'm sure I know there's plenty of ways.
Mm-hmm.
So since you mentioned triggers, um, I guess you'd start there, right? So
Yeah.
it's somebody, you're out in the grocery store and somebody bumps into you, or someone flips you off on the freeway. Those are triggers. For some people, they're huge triggers, and people go to huge extremes and do crazy things. To other people, are just like, whatever, right? And then
Yeah.
you come together in a romantic relationship. I see what you're saying. um, those same feelings are magnified.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that's because you've created a bond. You're closer to that person. Um, and so when something happens, there there's a trigger. And usually if the other person's being triggered, that same person's being triggered. They're both being triggered. So
Right.
it goes both ways. It's not just like,
Yeah.
oh, this is me. Oh, it's me. It's not you type thing,
Right.
right?
Well,
It's
if
actually
one person is able to not stay triggered, then that person can stay in the place of love and pull the other person. You know, they can love the person back to love and truth. But if we're both triggered, then what? Right.
right. So
Yeah.
that's when you take a break.
Mm,
I don't mean necessarily take off from each other. That could be one way,
right.
or you communicate, but understanding that that trigger has to do with the past. That has to do with your expectations, has to do with your up to date conditioning, the conditioning that you have up to this moment, um, and then also from past relationships, because you've brought, if you have had past relationships where you had the same type of emotional triggers happening, um, then being able to see that, so taking a moment, taking a breath, deciding what your next step is. Am I going to communicate? Are we going to communicate with each other? Or do we need to take a break? Do I need to just feel whatever crap is happening within me? Usually that's what it is just being able to feel it. Am I going to feel it alone, or am I going to feel it with you? Um, which is, what's the healthy choice in that moment? And I think it comes down to the moment, and it comes down to the people. How, and everybody's very unique. So it's, even with, coaching couples, it's like you have to understand the dynamic of that relationship and the history of that relationship, and understand what would be the best thing for that, for those two people, right?
Mm.
But if you don't have anybody to help you, then it's like, what would be the best thing for us right now in this moment to deal with this? And it's just, it's not going to kill you. It's a trigger, is just a trigger, right? It's not going to, but it can feel
Right.
huge. But I know what
Sometimes
you're
it feels
saying.
like it's going to kill you, but yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Especially ones when it comes to, you know, jealousy or
Mm.
insecurities inside of a romantic relationship. And I think that, like, what you were saying combined with understanding that the trigger is just a perceptual thing. right? The trigger is happening based on our past experiences, based on everything that we've brought to this moment that's not present. And if we can stay in the knowing of that, we can allow for the validation to happen. So if I'm triggered and you're holding space for me, it's because you can see that my perception is true because it's my perception, and also it's not personal to you because it's a lifetime of things that are happening. And then from there, we can offer, if we're not both triggered, if only one of us is, then we can offer, that love and understanding, and offer even an opportunity to create a new experience so that a new perception can be born.
Yeah, and I mean, and this can happen in an instant, or it could take time, because
Mhm.
I think, you know, we're not trying to fix anything here. We're
Right,
not trying to I'm not trying to fix your trigger. You're not trying to fix
right,
my trigger. Or,
right.
that's saying that there's something broken or something wrong within us. We're
Exactly.
just trying to allow it to be, and then bring that compassion, or bring that energy of, it's almost like an energy of groundedness into whatever that is, so it doesn't continue down the road. It's like dealing with it now, which the now might be a week or two, or, you know 6 months, whatever, but actually looking at it and dealing with it in a way that it's, I'm not trying to fix you because, you're yelling at me every morning, and I don't know why that is, right? So it's and like I said, there's different ways to approach it. There's different techniques or tools or whatever you want to say. Um,
I love that
to,
you used that term. Like there's nothing to fix, because I think that is the perception that most of us, we're conditioned with, is that if there's something wrong, we need to fix it. And we view triggers as something that we need to escape from or change or fix. And love does not fix. Love accepts all things, it heals all things, and it transcends all things. And so I love that you use that word, because I think so many people are, I know I've been in relationships where my partner really felt like it was his job to fix me. And I could not feel loved by that, by taking on a belief that I needed to be fixed was not conducive to my happiness. It did not contribute to, seeing myself for who I am, or feeling loved.
yeah, yeah, and in those cases, it's, I've had stuff similar. It's like there's always something wrong with you, or there's always something, and that's not them actually dealing with their triggers, and then
Right,
and it spirals into, what did I do wrong, and then you feel like you've done something wrong, and then you can feel that there's no mutual support there, right? And
right,
that happens all the time in relationships. So navigating that has to do, it takes a lot of consciousness, meaning it takes a lot of awareness, self-awareness, and awareness of the other person to actually come together in a relationship. So um,
and
but
ownership. Like what you just said, it just like opened up a huge thread for me. So I'm not sure how to say this the way I'm seeing it, but like, so if I see something wrong with my partner, that has nothing to do with them. That has everything to do with me. Because the truth with a capital T is that everything is perfect, whole, complete, lacking nothing. And so, just from that point of view, if I see something wrong, it's not about the other person. That's a judgment I have that I can then take a look at. So that takes an incredible amount of awareness and an incredible amount of radical self responsibility.
yeah, yeah, it's you can't fight with it. You know, again, you focus on truth with a capital T. You know, um, it's almost like that can be the anchor. You know, the ballast of a sailboat is the love, is what's the most important thing. You know, it's unconditional love. It's a love beyond just the romance. It's a love that actually grounds you and grounds the relationship. So um,
I think that's the perfect anchor. I loved that word for it. The anchor in all relationships with yourself, with others, is the truth. And the truth is that only love is real. It's all love. We are all love. We are all pieces of love. And together we just make up more love.
mhm, yeah. And so the other part I would say in navigating a relationship would be mutual self interest, to be able to get beyond any or to move through triggers or to come together. There's usually something that, you know, it could be a spiritual self interest. It could be cooking. You both love cooking. It could be you both love yoga or you both love traveling. Maybe there's multiple mutual self interest. I think that's in order for a relationship to last, you have to have mutual self interests. Um, and you also have to have your individual self interest. You know, you might like cooking, I might hate it. So then you go cook, and I'll go, you know, play with model airplanes or something like that. It's not not that. Maybe I do have a secret self interest there, but you know what I'm saying? Like, okay, so you have to have mutual self interest, things that you really desire, that you both enjoy, but it's important to do your own thing too.
Yeah.
Um, it's important to have time to yourself. It's important to, you know, recharge, focus on your own interests. And then it's also important to do the things, continue to do the things that you enjoy together. And those might change too. Like you might love going to Tahiti every year, and then all of a sudden it's like, no, I don't like Tahiti. I like going to Fiji now. You know, I mean, of course, I'm going to always say tropical places because those are my favorite places. But
Mine too.
um, so, but yeah, how do you feel about that? What I'm saying about mutual self interest?
Yeah. So, okay. So, the way that I interpret this, and I can't think of the other word, it's so crazy, but there's like a difference between compatibility and then the other word, and that's, I can't think of it, but it's the shift. So I think the shift that's happening right now is that, you know, in relationships, at least when I was a kid, and if, you know, you look at my parents' relationship, they'll talk about, you know, you have to, it's not sacrifice, it's like, you know, it's such a common word. I don't know why it can't, like, I can't think of it. But it's like, you know, so we, like, I give a bit of my own happiness to make you happy. And so, like,
Sorry, I can't help you
I
here.
just want the word. I know. I can't think of it. It's so crazy. It's like literally gone out of my awareness. But it's like, so the way that I was taught, the way that I think the world, you know, was conditioned to believe relationships should be, would be sacrificing a little bit. So um I'm still trying to think of it, so I'm just going to let it go. But
You're still making sense.
in true compatibility, it's like compatibility is, you know, there will be differences, but they're differences that are livable together, if that makes sense. Like, so what I'm hearing is that when two people are compatible, that should be the goal, is compatibility, where neither one is having to make big sacrifices of who they are or what their interests are. Like if two people were in a relationship and one of them got a job and they wanted to move to New York and the other one really just was not compatible with that, you know, one person's going to have to sacrifice, or they split ways because it's no longer a compatibility, if that makes sense. Like the mutual interests are compatibility, not I'm so like I don't know why I can't think of this word.
You're
It's
making
so
perfect
common.
sense to me.
It's so
Yeah, I'm
common.
sorry I can't help you. I don't know what. I'm
It's
sure
okay. I'm just gonna look
we'll
it up.
get it like two
Go
seconds
ahead
after
and
we go,
yeah.
finish. Yeah, but I agree because when you think about the word sacrifice, how does that make you feel? It makes you feel like shit,
Yeah.
right? Like
Like
why
I
would
have to give up a part of myself for someone else.
right, right, and why would you want to make any sacrifices?
Hmm.
Is that gonna do the relationship any good? Really?
Right.
How because you're feeling like crap to be able to sacrifice something.
Right.
Um, so that's where the understanding comes in that you do your thing, I do our thing, we do things together,
Yeah.
and that's I think that's more healthy than saying, okay, I'm going to give up 6 months out of the year just to be with you, but I really don't want to because I'd much rather live, in Fiji than um, you know, New Mexico or whatever it is. So
And I think it
yeah,
strains the relationship too, because then one person is going to lose out. So if one person's needs are getting met, the other person's is not. And as far as navigating, this is the place that, I always teach is that we're looking at, okay, you have needs and I have needs. So instead of saying whose needs get met, it's how do we both get our needs met in this situation without having to sacrifice, without having to accommodate in a way that is a win lose. Like, how can we win win? And if we can't win win, then maybe we're not compatible.
hmm or maybe we're not compatible on that specific subject or that thing right then and there. Like like if you want to go to the North Shore and I want to stay in Waikiki, for example, that doesn't mean that we should break up, right? I mean,
Right.
it's just like, okay, well that's
Right.
what you want. I think you should go fulfill that need, and
Yeah.
I'll just stay here and I'll surf the little tiny itty bitty waves in Waikiki, right? Like so, but yeah, I think if that were to happen every day, then yeah, like
Right.
there's no compatibility, right? So
Right.
that's why I think self mutual self interest is really important because
Mhm.
I mean you have an interest in spirituality and for example you have a connection with Jesus for example and you know I have that connection too, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
um, then or somebody for example they love climbing trees, and the other person loves climbing trees every morning at 7 a.m. Or, I'm just kind of going, it doesn't have to be 7 a.m. Why can't we do it at 8? It's like, okay,
Right.
we'll do it at 8.
Yeah.
Um, so, yeah, that's where it comes because you can have that and then you can understand the other person
Yeah.
that they can
And
go
I
do their
I
thing.
love the distinction here too. Like, so when you were talking about like if I want to go to the North Shore and you want to stay in Waikiki, if if I go to the North Shore and you surf in Waikiki, that is a mutual interest. That's not a something that's going to cause long-term separation or sacrifice in a relationship. Now, if I am turning to God and asking Jesus for guidance on, pretty much everything that I do, and you don't believe in God or Jesus, now that could be an incompatibility that, can put a strain on, the long term overall, because how could we ever come together if you don't believe the things that I believe, right? So like the mutual
Right.
interests, I think, are like the in the world life things, whereas the compatibility is like
Mm.
those deeper perspectives or values or desires. That makes sense.
Right. Right. And there's a feeling to that too. I think it's more than just, because here we're talking just very, in a way, we're talking intellectually, I mean, there's feelings behind our words, obviously, but there's a feeling to compatibility it's not just um, the things you do, it's how you feel about each other, right?
Yeah,
There's something deeper there. You just know, you feel comfortable with the person, you feel like you can tell them anything. That's compatibility.
yeah.
um, I don't know if you can hear the rain. It's just ended up
I
pouring
can. I
here.
like it.
Yeah. um, I do too. It's so beautiful when it starts raining.
Compromise. That's the word.
Yeah.
Compatibility or compromise. That,
Compromise. Oh yeah, yeah,
yes,
yeah. That's another word that's like, I guess it would be triggering, right? Sacrifice and compromise.
yes, yes.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
right.
It just finally came to me. I had to call it out.
And look, just a few minutes before we finish, too. Perfect
I know.
timing.
Yeah. So before we end, I know we had talked about this a little bit. So I'd like to offer one of the exercises that we had talked about to anyone who's listening. And, this is just one of many, many exercises that you can do in any relationship, but particularly the romantic relationship is to do check-ins. And that can be as frequent or as whatever interval is comfortable for you and your partner. It could be once a week, it could be daily, depending on the level of closeness and seriousness of your relationship. But check in and ask. Um, and this is based on how two people will always have different perspectives. So it's if we don't do this, it's easy for us to get out of line with our joint perception of what the relationship actually is. So going back to what you said a long time ago, Tyler, was communication. So check in and ask, what is going well for you in this relationship right now? How do you see the relationship right now? What are the things that you feel loved the most by what I do? What causes you to feel unloved by me? And have those conversations in a very transparent way so that you're both staying in the same track, and at least and over time, if there's not those matching desires, or then it's not such a big shock if the relationship ends. But really, I think that if two people love each other and they're grounded in the truth with a capital T, and they're grounded in love, if we're doing these check-ins, if we're asking these questions, if we're truly caring about loving our partner and how our behavior impacts how they feel or how they perceive the relationship, these are tools that are going to not only keep you in the same perceptual reality of the relationship itself, but will also connect you guys deeper and create more intimacy in your connection.
Beautiful. I think we should end it there because I can't top that one. Not that I would want to top it, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah.
Okay. So, in closing, then, again, we had a little bit of technical difficulties. So, I have no idea how many people joined us live. I have no idea of your questions or comments, but if you did leave them, we will address them either in the comment section or we'll talk about them in our next live next week. So today, to recap, we talked about perception as it relates to the romantic relationship. And next week is just before Thanksgiving. So we'll be talking about perception as it relates to family and relationships within the family.
Perfect timing for the holidays.
Perfect timing. So thank you everyone who joined us live, and thank you everyone who watches this on the replay. If you want to ask Tyler and I questions, we'll put our email as well as links to our website in the description of this video, wherever you're watching it, Facebook, YouTube, or YouTube. And so, yeah, just let us know what questions you have or comments or concerns.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.